Welcome to the Slow Wine Guide 2021. I'm here with Ted Lemon, owner and winemaker at Littorai, and Rachel Dixon, National Sales Manager, along with Sally Onlin, Field Coordinator for the Slow Wine Guide. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you here today. We've got 3 wines that are going to be in the 2021 guide. We're not featuring the slow wine from the Terrio vineyard, the Chardonnay that won the Slow Wine Award last year. We've got a new Chardonnay up this year. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. I think you have Maze Canyon Chardonnay. There
I have the 2018 Maze Canyon.
2018. So this site, because nothing is ever simple in the world of certifications and Littorai, that site actually is Demeter certified biodynamic, but we don't put it on the label. It is, but we don't put it on the label because as you know, we don't certify anything at Littorai and we stay true to our guns. But this is a little site outside of the little town of Guerneville, in the part of the Russian River, which, as you know, is no longer the floodplain. This is the winding hills as it leads to the coast. And this is a site that's unique in that it has the Russian River on 3 sides of it, flowing from the east to the north and around to the west of it.
East, north, and west. So that leaves south.
That leaves south. South is Occidental.
Okay,
And the name of the vineyard is Porter Bass. So if you're familiar with
it, is the name of the road upon which this vineyard is located.
I got it. Yes, I absolutely do know that. So we've heard a lot about the 2017 vintage, but we're just starting to see some of the 2018s. So can you touch on the 28 vintage, some of your observations about what that was like?
Sure. It was, we're pretty circumspect at Littorai about saying how great wines are. We try to be very cautious about that, but certainly 2018 is going to go down as a great vintage for coastal Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Great acidities, really good concentration, and the wines have a length and a purity, which I think is really outstanding. As you'll remember, Deborah, we were much more challenged by heat in 2017.
Absolutely.
18, we didn't experience that.
Right. It was a little more even vintage. Is
Exactly.
there any such thing as is there any such thing as normal anymore?
What do you think, Rachel? Is there any normal on the coast?
Not anymore.
I think the word normal should just be eliminated from vocabulary.
It's hard because, as you know, in California, on the coast, you can bud out really early, Deborah, but then things can vegetate for a very, very, very long time, which is
the vegetative cycle is long.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the tradition of Europe, or at least Northern Europe. And so it's hard to describe anything as normal anymore. Yeah. You never know.
So remind me, Ted, what is the clone or the mix of clones for this?
There's 3 or 4 in there. There's one of the Dijon clones, which is 95. There is a heritage clone, which all we can call it is Dutton, because Sue, the owner, originally sourced the budwood at Dutton Vineyards.
Yeah.
The famous old vineyard that was behind the shop that was used for a lot of the Kistler bottlings, etc. And then there is also another selection called Hyde, which you would have heard of, no doubt. And then starting in 2018, there's actually 6 different selections all planted within the same acre of vines. So there was a young vine block that now has 6 completely different clones. And the whole theory, of course, is that the assemblage, or the blend, is much stronger than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Absolutely. Well, the wine is there's certainly physiologic and phenolic ripeness here for sure. But the acid is just like a single thread through the wine. But you definitely can taste the ripeness, which is great. Do you have a tendency to pick based on sugars, or are you really just tasting and looking at ripeness?
It's a little bit of everything. I no longer believe in the human conceit that you really can tell when it's ripe by tasting. And I know that I'm going against somebody very famous in Italy called vitivinicola, who was one of the great fathers of Barolo, or modern Barolo, who to the end of his days working said that he believed in tasting to determine ripeness. But I kind of gave up on that one, so apologies to Pepe Cola. So it's a mix of numbers, tasting, logistics, practicality, you name it. It's all in the soup.
Got it. Got it. And reflected in the glass
Hopefully.
as well. Thank you. Okay, wine number 2. Let's move it on. Shall we taste the Haven or shall we taste the 1 acre?
Why don't you do 1 acre first?
Okay, I'm excited. 1 acre. This is a new one for me. And 1 acre sounds like a really small production. So
Yeah, so this is a site, this was the first Pinot Noir we ever made back in 1993. At that time, we did not own this site. So it was owned by Rich Savoy. It is not the same site as Savoy Vineyards. Again, nothing's ever easy in wine. But it is, it's the first site we worked with in 93. We've been making the wine continuously since then. And in the summer of 2016, we actually purchased the site from Rich. So this is now part of our estate. And so we've been making changes little by little, but the plantings are the ones that Rich had done. 1,600 feet in elevation above the town of Boonville. So quite high up, usually later to ripen, a little slower to bud out in the spring.
Anderson Valley, yeah, really interesting Pinots always coming from Anderson Valley.
And a lot of diversity, I would say, from Anderson Valley, right from the hillsides to the hilltops down to the valley floor. It's the Anderson Valley wine growers were working on a project to try to determine if you can tell tastes from different parts of the valley. I think it's going to be very difficult. For such a tiny valley, there's a lot of variation from site to site.
They're looking for a unified kind of set of markers for the entire valley?
Well, the question is, can you tell the wines of the East Ridge from the West Ridge?
Oh, or from, closer to the coast or
Exactly.
further south where the warmer part of the valley further south where.
Right, so we're working on a long-term study for that.
Wow.
It's going to be
That's really interesting. I find that because there's still so much native flora there. There's a lot of polyculture. A lot of the vineyards are really influenced by, the shading of the natural foresting that's still there. They're cooler because of that. But I always feel that the south end of the valley is warmer and that I can taste that ripeness, that the fruit is either darker or the pHs are a little higher or something's pointing to this is the warmest site, right? And that's not the case for this, for the 1 acre, right?
right. Well, you're at the warmer end, but you're 1,600 feet in elevation. So it ends up being one of the last things we pick. Absolutely.
So it stays out there quite a while. Not shy on the tannin. And this is again 2018.
Yeah, so the Pinots I think you'll find are not just the Littorai by any means, but the 2018, Anderson Pinots have a lot of structure. And yet I don't think of them, the tannins as being firm. So I think they're one of those rare vintages that are going to be pleasant for people young, but will age really well. I said, Deborah, they're not the biggest wines we've ever made. They're not the most alcoholic. They're not the highest in acidity. They're not the biggest in tannin, but they have everything. They have sweetness, they have tannin, they have structure, they've got it all. And I think, as you know, in your work, a lot of times it's all about balance, right? It's when you put everything together that the wines really shine. I mean, Rachel,
the secondary characteristics here are amazing. I'm getting like a little bit of orange zest, and then I'm getting some beautiful complex secondary notes from the barrel regime that you're using. Absolutely delicious, so complex for 2018, just showing, really incredibly well. Wow. Really, really a treat to be able to taste it. Thank you very much for the samples. So production bottle. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to mention something for those that aren't aware of kind of the differences between Anderson Valley and Sonoma Coast Pinots, because, working with them for so long, gratefully, I feel that the Anderson Valley Pinots tend to have a little bit more darker fruit, kind of more like plum and blackberry, maybe even a little more hint of earthiness, whereas the Sonoma Coast wines have that beautiful bright red fruit, more that tart cherry and cranberry, pomegranate, and always usually have a lovely spiciness to them. So I just like to tell people that aren't fully aware of kind of the differences between, those appellations.
What you could expect from those two regions, those sub-regions. And also sometimes you get a little bit of that cola or root beer note in those Pinots from the RR, you know, from the Russian River 88 that I don't typically find in Anderson Valley,
No,
not at
yeah,
this elevation.
definitely not. And then as Ted, we were talking earlier when he mentioned that we now have a program of biodynamic, you know, to basically have the compost and everything, a mini version of what we do at the pivot. And now because of the purchase of that 1 acre, that is where that extra farm is.
It's all happening up there. I would love to go see it. There's a gorgeous ferrous kind of mineral note to this wine, particularly when I nose my empty glass, that the mineral expression of the wine really starts to come out for me. And that is just something I will chase all day. Absolutely. Okay, wine number 3. This is the Haven Vineyard. And this also is the 2018. It's great to get a look at these 2018 vintages. These are the wines that are going to be in the marketplace when the guide is released. And that's really key for readers of the guide.
Sure. So you are back down on the Sonoma coast, as you know, by the label. This site's about 3 miles from the ocean as the crow flies, owned by us. Slightly lower in elevation than 1 acre at about 1,200 feet, but nonetheless a vineyard relatively high up. Ripens about the same time as 1 acre, which is kind of fun. So we have weather stations at both, Deborah, and it's fascinating to watch them. They often mirror each other quite closely. And that goes back to what you may have heard me say years ago, that to us at Littorai, there's a logic of continuity to the coastal wines that ignores county governmental boundaries, you know? Yes, Anderson Valley is a true valley, which the Sonoma coast is not, right? And so that has certain implications. But beyond that, there's a family group because of our geologic origins and proximity to the coast.
Absolutely. There's no denying the intercoastals do give you some relief, right? You're still on the western side of the intercoastals, even at 1,200 feet, right? So you're not getting that full blast. And also in Anderson Valley too, the intercoastal there really helps protect it, you know, from all of that intense maritime influence.
Right. I mean, the sites that are really directly exposed, there are very, very few that are actually planted to grapes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to get geeky, something like Coastlands on Fitzpatrick Road in Western Sonoma, that's directly exposed, but they're very few.
Yeah, most of them are on the eastern side, even if they're way, way up high at the very peak up there. I know Boleto has some interesting sites up there as well too. Wow, this wine has a really incredible sapidity to it. And that's a term that the Italian readers and listeners can relate to. But I really find that in this wine. There's maybe like a little touch of green peppercorn or something herbal there that's just, I'm just chasing it. I'm like, wow, I got to keep tasting. I can figure it out.
For us in the Haven, the tannins sort of kick in late in the palate. So at first you get this lovely impression of richness and generosity. And then it's only at the end of the palate we go, oh, gee, yeah, there's more tannin there than I realized.
Yeah, it's always very brightly aromatic and very inviting on the nose. And then I just love how that tannin and acidity comes in on the end and just kind of calms down that lushness that you first perceive.
It's gorgeous. It kind of builds toward it. The aromas and flavors of the fruit kind of build toward the tannin finish. And the tannin finish tells me, wow, this wine can stand up to just about anything on a plate. It's great. It will definitely be a good partner for heavier dishes, lamb. We don't talk food pairing too much, but boy, when you start tasting these wines, your stomach starts growling because it's pushing all the buttons. I think it's lunchtime for me. All right. Well, it's showing really well.
I just wanted to add, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add that was actually the first vineyard that Ted planted BD from inception.
Mm. And still working like a charm. So the vines are pushing 30 now. How old are they?
20 years, planted in 2001.
201, yeah. So 20 years. Boy, time does fly. And hopefully 20 more years of biodynamic wine production at Littorai. I want to thank Ted and Rachel and Sally for being here with me today Thank you so much for the samples and the tasting, and we'll see you in the 2021 guide.
Thank you.
Grazie. Thank you.
Bye, grazie. Ciao.
Grazie. Grazie.